In today's video, I'm creating a no-sew journal with our latest junk journal kit, Winter Solstice. By the time this video will go live, we're going to be halfway into winter. I recorded this in early January with every hope of getting it out right away, and that just did not happen. I love how this kit turned out, and I love the junk journal I made, so I'm still going to put this out there, even though I suspect we're all hoping winter is over soon and we can turn our attention to spring. I do have some flips and flaps that I'll be adding into my journal as I create that are included in the kit. But I always like to say that this is a tutorial that you can apply to any half-page printable kit. And if you know how the flips and the flaps and the pockets are made, you can create your own versions. You could also trim scrapbook paper from your stash, and I would recommend the thinner single-sided papers for this particular binding method. I have printed all of my half pages on regular copy paper at 95%. That's why you see the white border. If I print these at 100% of their full size, the entire page does not print. For my printer, when I shrink these half pages to 95%, they finally print correctly. That goes for any ephemera pieces that need to be the same width as the half page. I also printed the half page with this card at 95% so that this flip up card fits my printed page. I do trim off the white borders and then I ink around all of the edges before I assemble my journals. Let me clear off my desk and we can start making this one. Okay, so I have trimmed all of the half pages I want to include in my journal. Here is a half page I have not trimmed so that you can see the size of my journal page is about 1/4 of an inch smaller on all four sides than a piece of 8.5 by 11 inch copy paper. And once I trim all of my pages, I inked all of the edges with brushed corduroy Distress Oxide ink. This is not a super dark color, it's a light warm brown, and I felt like it worked well with all of the golds in these papers. Inking is optional, of course. There is some slight shading on all of the printables. If you don't want to add extra ink, you don't need to. By the way, I don't think that I said this. This is Phantom Charm Studios. My name is Tammy. Thank you so much for joining me today. This Winter Solstice junk journal kit is available in our Etsy shop. I'll leave a link in the description box below to the kit along with a coupon code that you can use to save 35% off everything in our shop if you buy 2 items. If you want to look at the entire kit, the short video I posted right before this one goes through all of the pages so you can see all of the artwork and ephemera included. You get to mix and match the pages however you want. I try to give myself a mix of images along with the journaling pages. You can never have too many journaling pages. I also like having a lot of the lined pages because you can add pockets to them if you don't want to cover up the pretty images. I chose this hourglass to be the last page of my journal. I'm going to use this leaf pattern as the spine that will wrap around the outside of my journal. I did print this on premium cardstock as I want the spine to be stronger than regular copy paper. These are the covers I'm going to use for my journal. I also printed these on premium cardstock at 95%. For this binding style, I need the covers to be the same size as the pages inside the journal. I also chose a golden brown satin ribbon to use as a closure for my journal, so I have this close by to glue in before I add the cover. In this kit, I included flip-up cards that I'm going to glue in between the pages, so I'm also keeping these nearby. You can do that or not depending on your journal. If you're using an existing journal, you might just glue these directly onto other pages. By adding these when I glue the pages together, I can hide the flaps between the pages. The flip up card will have a pocket on it, and the flip out card will also have a couple of pockets on one side and another card from the kit glued to the other side. I think that's all I wanted to talk about before I start gluing the pages together. I'm just going to set these off to the side and grab my glue. I'm using Fabri-Tac for this journal. It's my favorite glue for bookmaking because it's not water-based, so it's not going to warp the paper. Always feel free, though, to use your favorite adhesive. There are many different ways to glue half pages like these together, but this is my favorite way for a couple of reasons. First, it's beginner friendly. If you've never made a junk journal before, this is a good place to start. Second, the pages will lay flat. And why is that important? When the pages lay flat, the journal is much easier to decorate and it's easier to write in. The way we are going to put this together is to glue the back of one sheet to the front of the next. I already have these pages in the order that I want them, so I don't have to make any decisions as I'm gluing. I can just start gluing one by one. We won't do anything with the front of our first page yet. Our cover will get glued directly to this page once we have the rest of the journal together. I'm going to make sure that I have the back of the second page facing me because that is where I will start gluing. We're going to be gluing the back of each page to the front of the next page. Using my Fabri-Tac, I'm adding a small bead of glue all the way around the outside border of the page. I like to add a little extra in the corners to make sure all of the corners are completely covered, and then I can add a bit in the center of the page. But again, use whatever glue method you prefer. Keeping the page with the glue on the table, I'm going to grab the next page on the stack, making sure to adhere the front side of this page to the page on the table with the glue. I'm lining up the fold lines together and making sure that both ends are even. As you keep gluing each page on top of each other, you really want to make sure that all of these fold lines are perfectly straight as you glue. If one of them is uneven, the rest of the pages you glue will also be uneven. Using my white scraper tool, I'm going to press this along the page, adding some pressure to make sure that the glue is getting pushed into the paper fibers. You could also use a brayer or an old credit card to do the same thing. If any glue seeps over the edges, I can use a paper towel to wipe it off. Again, I'm just making sure that my fold lines are even and this looks good. Should you find any white edges like this, there are a couple of things you can do. You can trim off the excess with scissors, or you can add some extra ink to the edge to help cover it up. I tend to do all of that after I'm done gluing the journal. This is going to happen when you have fussy cut edges. Everything will not always align perfectly. It's more important to have the fold lines be straight and for the corners to line up. It's also a good idea to keep going back and opening the pages as you glue, just in case any glue seeped over the edge. It's better to wipe that off as soon as it happens to ensure the glue isn't sticking where you don't want it. Another thing that's great about Fabri-Tac is that if any glue does get somewhere you don't want it, it's easy to rub off. I'm going to grab my glue and start gluing the next page. I'm adding glue all the way around the outside border, adding a little extra in the corners and a bit in the middle. I like to stay as close to the border as I can without going over. You want the edges of the pages to be securely glued, but you don't want a lot of excess seeping over the side. The more you do this, you'll eventually find your own sweet spot and know exactly how far in you should add the glue. With my next page, I'm making sure to line up the fold lines and making sure both corners are aligned. That looks good, so I'll grab my spreader tool and add some pressure along the page to make sure the glue is adhering. I'll flip the page and do the same thing on the back side of the page. You can see here that there's another place where there's a slight white edge that hangs over here. I'm not going to do anything about that right now. I like to fix that after I'm all done putting the pages together. But that is a personal preference thing. If you want to stop and get your scissors and take care of that or ink it now, feel free to do that. I'm ready to add in the next page. I do have two different interactive features that go along with this journal that I need to add when I glue the papers. I already mentioned that, but I will explain again that I want to glue in these flip cards when I'm gluing the pages together so that the flaps will get sandwiched between the pages. One of the things I love about creating these half-page journals is that the pages are really pretty and they have full-page images. I don't always want to cover up an image with the flap for the interactive elements. And that's not a problem at all if you've made a different kind of journal that has signatures or book pages, coffee dyed papers. Not every paper is as visual as this. And it's not an issue that the flaps are glued directly to the page. You can always find a blank page to add them to. But if you haven't worked with these half-page kits before, I want to show you how to add the elements now. Here is the first flip card. It's a dark blue print with the tree branches. It has a flap on here that allows the card to flip out and open, and that's the part I'm going to hide between the pages. I did not print anything on the back page of this card, but after I had all of my pieces cut, I realized that this bigger card with the owl was just about the same size, and I thought this was the perfect place to put it. So I'm going to glue this to the back side of my card, and I may just need to trim a little bit. If you didn't want to use the same card, you can always print one of the pattern papers on the back side of any ephemera sheet. Or you could print these pattern papers on separate sheets like I've done here and cut a piece from this paper to fit the card. Other things you can do to cover up the blank side is to add scraps of coffee dyed papers or other pattern paper scraps. You could stamp journaling lines with a clear stamp, or you could draw journaling lines with a ruler, or just write on the blank side and not cover it up at all. When I glue down my owl card, there could be some white from the side of the card that won't get covered up, especially at the flap where I'm going to glue this card between the papers. So I'm going to grab my brushed corduroy oxide ink and ink up this card just a little bit before I glue anything. By adding some inking to the fold line here, what would show is the inked edge instead of this dark white paper. If that's not something that bothers you, don't worry about it. This is just a tip to follow if you don't want to see the white. Using the same ink I've used throughout the junk journal also helps maintain continuity throughout the journal. And you can be heavy-handed here. This doesn't have to look nice. Most of it will get covered up. I'm mostly wanting the folded edge to have some color. And I will take this all the way around the outside edge of the card so that if the owl card isn't exactly the same size, I don't have to worry about any white edges showing underneath. I used an ink applicator tool, but you could also do the same thing with a blending brush. Grabbing my glue, I'm going to glue the owl card to the back of the flip card before I glue it into the journal. I feel if I do it this way, it will be easier to trim off any uneven edges if there are any. Adding the owl card, I'm making sure the card stays below the fold line. If you accidentally glue over the fold line, you're going to have issues folding the card properly. I did not think to do this, but always remember that you could make this flip out card into another pocket if you wanted to. Only glue 3 of the 4 sides and do not put any glue in the center of the card. Just leave either the top or the outside edge clear. There are tags and other cards in the kit that would fit into that pocket. A little bit of glue seeped over the edge, so I'm just going to wipe that away before I add it to the journal. And here's where the glue is pretty forgiving. This glue is not dried yet, so I was able to peel the card away as soon as I realized that I glued it upside down. Yes, that was an accident. I didn't check the direction first. Learn from my mistake and don't do that. Always check the directions before you glue. Luckily, the card did not rip. I immediately added the card back down, and after a bit of a struggle, it went down just fine. Now that my near disaster has been fixed, I can glue this flip card into the journal. I'm going to add the glue directly to the flap and glue it to the backside of the page in front of me. You can see that by adding the inking over the fold in the card that this looks seamless. There is no white edge here looking out of place. I'm just adding this to make sure I haven't glued over the fold line. Always test these as you glue them to make sure the flaps open and close, and then I'll wipe away any excess glue. Folding this page over, I'm going to add the glue now to the back side of this page. I'm double checking to make sure my fold lines are at the top of the journal so that when I add the next paper, I don't accidentally attach it upside down. You can see now how easily that can happen. In addition to adding a little extra glue at the corners and along the outside edge, I'm also adding glue around the flap and on top of the flap. The next page will go right over the top and secure the card between the two pages. With the fold line at the top, I'm adding in the next page, making sure the folds are all even and the corners line up. Again, as you keep adding pages one on top of the next, just keep watching this fold line and making sure that all of the pages and corners align. As long as all of these pages are straight, the rest of the journal will be pretty straight as well. And it's really that simple to put this kind of journal together with these half-page printable kits. You're just folding the pages in half with the images on the inside and gluing the pages together back to front. I'm just going to keep gluing the next page in the stack to the pages I've already glued. There is no minimum or maximum number of pages that you need to include in the journal. It's however many pages you want. I will use a total of 11 pages in mine. When I'm making these journals from the kits we sell in our Etsy shop, I like to stick with the kit and show different things that can be done with just the kit. But at home, you can make this kind of a junk journal with anything you have on hand, whether it be other half pages, digital kits, book pages, coffee dyed pages, whatever you have. What I hope to show in my video, whether I'm using digital kits or scrapbook paper or thrifted items, is the method. Here's one way to create this journal. And once you see how it's done, you can apply that method in your own way with whatever products you like. Of course, if you're interested in what I'm using, our Etsy shop is linked below in the description box. I'm working hard to get more junk journal kits listed. We still have way more clip art and pattern paper sets than junk journal kits, but more are coming this year. And I do have other tutorials planned for making other types of journals with scrapbook papers, making journals with signatures that are sewn into the binding, paper bag journals, and envelopes. There are so many different ways to use all of the stuff that we collect. So if you're enjoying my content, please consider liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and hitting the notification bell so that you don't miss any future videos. Okay, so now I'm up to the other page in this journal that has an interactive feature that I want to glue into the book when I glue the pages together. This card with the white flower, the snowberries, and the pine cones will flip up. There is a pocket that is designed to go on this page as well, and I will show you that in the next video when we decorate the journal. I did not print anything on the back of this ephemera page with this card, so I think I'm going to go ahead and do something with it now. Here is one of the pattern papers included in the kit that I printed on regular copy paper. I'm just going to grab a pencil and mark on the back where to make the cuts, and I will trim this paper to cover the back side of the card, and then I'll make it into a pocket. It's great to have these extra papers on hand to coordinate with the kit so you can add extras like this. Before I attach the pocket, I'm going to ink around the back of this card the same way I did with the last one. I'll add ink to the fold line so there are no harsh white spots that look out of place. And then using my ruler, I'm tearing the paper down to the size of the flip-up card. I'm also inking around the outside edges of this pocket the way I have on all of the papers in this journal. I pulled out a circle punch to add a notch at the top of this pocket. I didn't measure this. You could, of course, find the middle and punch there, but I just eyeball this and add the notch as close to the middle as possible. This will be a pocket, so I'm only adding glue to 3 sides and nothing in the center, keeping the top open. I'm going to add glue to the flap and glue this card to the half page first before I glue the paper onto the journal. I need to make sure that I'm gluing this to the right page in the right place. This card will go on the page with the big full moon, just like so. And now this flip up card has a pocket that I can fill with ephemera from the kit. Be sure to wipe off any excess glue if anything seeps over the edges. It's a good idea to go back and keep checking the pages as you make the journal to make sure any excess glue isn't sticking where it shouldn't. Now that I'm looking at this card attached to the page, the other way to do this would have been to make a side pocket for the journaling cards to slide in and out of the side. That would work just as well. I'm going to glue the rest of the pages for my journal off camera. I'll come back to add the ribbon closure, the binding, and the covers. I wrapped my silky ribbon around the journal and using my pinking shears, that's the scissors with the zigzag ridges, I'm cutting the ribbon to the size I need. If you were trying to conserve ribbon, you could cut 2 shorter pieces and just glue them overlapping the front and back edges if you wanted, but I have plenty of this ribbon, so mine will span the entire front and back sides. The ribbon will get glued down at this stage before the spine and the covers. Doing it at this point, the ribbon will be secured under the cover and the spine, so there won't be any chance it could come apart from the journal. There is nothing special here that I'm doing to glue down the ribbon. I'm just using Fabri-Tac, which is great for gluing fabrics, so it's the perfect glue to use here. I'm adding glue along the page where the ribbon will fall and then smoothing it down. Of course, other glues work as well. You could use a PVA glue or the Tombow Mono Blue adhesive. I would spread out the glue with your finger so that it's a thinner coat though. A glue stick would work fine for this too. Same thing on the back. I'm just running the glue along the page where the ribbon will fall and I'm pressing the ribbon into the glue. I printed this pattern paper on cardstock to cover the spine for my journal. It's going to get glued around the papers. The papers are already bound together, so all this will do is hide the folded edge to give the journal more of a clean look. I'm grabbing my design ruler to see how wide I need to make my spine. The binding edge of my journal measures just over 1/4 of an inch. I will need to cut my spine wide enough to wrap around the end of the book, plus a bit more space on each side of the journal to glue the sides down. So this is the second time I've cut this piece. I didn't give myself enough room the first time. I'm cutting this piece at 1 3/4 inches. So that gives me 1/4 of an inch for the spine and then 3/4 of an inch for each side of the journal. And that's really what you want. 3/4 plus 3/4 is 1 1/2 inches. Add 1.5 inches to whatever you calculate your binding edge to be. So if your binding edge measures 1/2 inch, add the 1.5 inches to that and you get 2 inches. I'm also trimming this piece down to the height of my journal. And now that my spine is cut to the right size, I can use this piece. You really want to make sure that you have at least 3/4 of an inch on each side of the spine to wrap around. Using my scissors, I'm cutting off all 4 corners of my spine to remove some of the paper bulk. I'm not measuring, there is no precise measurement here. I'm just snipping off the corners at an angle. And now I can wrap my spine around my journal. I don't want to add a fold or a crease in the spine. I want the spine to just wrap around the binding edge. So I'm rolling this piece a bit to loosen the paper fibers, and I'm just going to bend each end up a bit without adding a crease. When you feel like you've got enough of a wrap, it's time to glue the spine to the journal. You're not wrapping the spine flush to the binding edge. You want to have a little bit of a gap there so that the spine has room to grow when you fill up the pages. I'm doing my best to try and make sure there's about the same amount on each side of the journal and that it's not too tight around the binding. But this doesn't have to be precise. I know people often want exact measurements, but here you just want enough length on each side to be able to glue the spine down to each side of the journal. I'm running my glue over the binding edge, over the ribbon, and then pressing the spine into the glue. I'll repeat the same thing on the other side, running the glue along the binding edge and pressing the spine down. You really want it to maintain the curve around the spine. Fabri-Tac glue dries pretty quickly, but if you're using PVA glue or another water-based glue, you may want to add some binder clips or clamps over the binding and let it dry for a little bit before moving on to the cover. I'm happy with how my spine looks, so in this last step, I will glue the covers to my journal. I'm using this floral page as the cover. Just make sure you didn't turn your journal upside down. Make sure that you glue the cover to the first page of the journal. Like with all of the other pages, I'm adding glue all the way around the borders with a bit in the middle, and then I'll attach my front cover. I'm only making sure that the corners of the cover align with the corners of the pages. That's the part that I really want to be straight. And then I'll press the rest of the cover down to adhere to the first page. And my white spreader tool helps push the cover into the glue. Turning the journal over, I'm doing the same thing with the back cover. Here I'm using this all over floral print with more of the same white flowers. I'm adding glue all the way around the borders with a little bit in the middle and will attach my back cover. I'm making sure that the corners of the cover align with the corners of the last page of the journal and moving them around a bit until I'm happy with the alignment. I'm opening up my journal at the last page to lay the cover flat on my desk. I'm opening my journal at the last page and laying the cover flat on my desk to make sure that the cover is glued well to the spine and see that the spine still has some give in it. I'll do this with both the front and the back, pressing the cover into the spine to make sure they are adhering well. I'm going to let my journal dry, and in the next video, we'll decorate this journal. I'll see you then.